My name is Sarah. I'm 33 years old, and I'm the mother of two incredible 8-year-old twins, Lily and Max. After my divorce 18 months ago, we found ourselves moving in with my parents in their spacious home in suburban Denver. At first, it felt like a lifeline, a chance to rebuild our lives while having the support system I desperately needed as a newly single mother, working as a registered nurse in the pediatric ICU. But before I tell you how everything unraveled and changed our lives forever, I'd love to know, where are you reading this story from? If you enjoy real-life stories about family drama, resilience, and finding strength in the darkest moments, please hit that like button and subscribe for more inspiring tales of everyday courage. Your support means the world to storytellers like me. The end of my marriage to Michael had been devastating in every possible way. We'd been together for 11 years, and I'd built my entire life around the assumption that we were in it for the long haul. When he announced he wanted a divorce, citing the classic "we've grown apart" excuse, while conveniently leaving out the part about his coworker Jennifer, my world crumbled overnight. Financially, I was in no position to maintain our lifestyle on my own. Michael worked as an IT consultant, making nearly 3 times my salary, and I'd been working part-time to be more available for the twins during their early years. The divorce settlement left me with shared custody, minimal spousal support, and the urgent need to transition to full-time work to keep us afloat. That's when my parents, Helen and Robert, stepped in with their offer. "Just until you get back on your feet, honey," my mother had said, patting my shoulder with what I thought was genuine compassion. "You and the kids need family right now." I was grateful, despite knowing that our family dynamics had always been complicated. Growing up, I'd learned to navigate the delicate balance of being the responsible daughter, while watching my younger brother Marcus receive the lion's share of our parents' attention and praise. At 30, Marcus had dropped out of his master's program, started and failed at 2 different business ventures, both funded by our parents, and was now finally finding success in real estate development. Meanwhile, I'd put myself through nursing school, specialized in pediatric care because I genuinely loved working with children, and had built a solid, if not glamorous, career. But somehow, Marcus's flashy lifestyle and entrepreneurial spirit always seemed to overshadow my steady achievements in our parents' eyes. When we first moved in, Lily and Max were wonderful about adjusting to their new environment. Lily, my little artist, was always sketching or creating elaborate stories, blessed with an imagination that could transform any ordinary moment into an adventure. Max was my sensitive soul, and my athlete, fiercely protective of his sister, and quick to sense when something wasn't right in the adult world around us. The arrangement with my parents started smoothly enough. They converted their den into a bedroom for the twins, complete with bunk beds and a small desk area for homework. I took over the guest room and immediately began contributing to household expenses, groceries, and took on most of the cooking responsibilities. The kids were respectful of their grandparents' routines, kept their belongings organized, and genuinely seemed to enjoy the extra attention from Helen and Robert. I was working 12-hour shifts at Colorado Children's Hospital, often including weekends and occasional night shifts. The schedule was grueling, but the pay was good, and my parents' help with school pickups and after-school care made it manageable. My plan was straightforward: save aggressively for 10 to 12 months, build up enough for a security deposit and first few months' rent, and then move us into our own place. Everything changed when Marcus and his wife Jessica had their baby. Little Oliver was born in early spring, and from the moment Marcus called with the news, I could sense a shift in the household's energy. My parents, who had always favored Marcus, seemed to transform overnight into completely different people. The formal dining room, which had been used primarily for special occasions, was suddenly converted into an elaborate nursery, complete with a $800 crib, professional-grade changing station, and enough baby gear to stock a small store. This despite the fact that Marcus and Jessica lived in their own beautiful 4-bedroom house just 20 minutes across town. "We want Oliver to be comfortable when they visit," my mother explained when I questioned the expense. "Besides, Jessica needs the support. First-time mothers have so much to learn." The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been managing as a single mother for over a year, but apparently, my experience didn't qualify me as someone who might also need support. At first, I tried to be understanding. New babies are exciting, especially first grandchildren. Lily and Max had been the only grandchildren for 8 years, so perhaps Helen and Robert were simply rediscovering the joy of having a baby in the family. I encouraged the twins to be patient and kind, explaining that babies require lots of attention and that we should all help welcome their new cousin. But the favoritism that emerged wasn't subtle for long. Christmas arrived just 3 months after Oliver's birth, and the difference in gift-giving was impossible to ignore. Oliver, barely old enough to focus his eyes properly, received presents worth easily 3 times what Lily and Max found under the tree. Designer baby clothes, educational toys for future development, a high-end stroller for the nursery upstairs. The excess was staggering. When Max quietly asked why baby Oliver got so many more presents, my mother's response chilled me. "Well, honey, Oliver is just starting his life. He needs more things right now." Lily, wise beyond her years, simply nodded and continued playing with her new art set, but I saw the hurt in her eyes. The comments began to accumulate like paper cuts. "Oliver has Marcus's eyes. He's going to be such a handsome boy. Look how alert Oliver is for his age. He clearly inherited the family intelligence." Meanwhile, any achievements by my children were met with polite acknowledgement at best, or comparisons to their father at worst. I started working extra shifts, partly to build our savings faster, and partly to avoid the growing tension at home. But every day brought new evidence that in my parents' minds, Marcus's family was ascending to a status that my children and I would never achieve. The breaking point was still months away, but the foundation was already cracking. Spring melted into summer, and with it, any pretense of equal treatment in my parents' house disappeared entirely. What had started as excited grandparent behavior around Oliver's birth evolved into something far more troubling, a systematic elevation of Marcus's family at the expense of my children's sense of belonging. The shift became undeniable when Marcus called a family meeting in June. He and Jessica arrived on a Tuesday evening, Oliver dressed in an outfit that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget, and settled into the living room as if they were royalty granting an audience. "We've got some exciting news," Marcus announced, his eyes fixed on our parents rather than acknowledging me. "We've finally decided to do that major renovation we've been talking about. You know, the kitchen expansion and the master suite addition." My mother practically bounced in her chair. "Oh, how wonderful. You've been planning that for ages." Jessica shifted Oliver to her other knee, her perfectly manicured nails catching the light. "The thing is, we're going to need somewhere to stay during construction. Our contractor estimates 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe a bit longer if we run into any surprises." Before I could even process what was happening, my father was nodding enthusiastically. "You'll stay here naturally. We have plenty of space." I cleared my throat, my nursing instincts kicking in. Assess the situation before reacting. "Actually, we're already pretty tight on space with 5 people in the house." I gestured toward myself, the twins, and my parents. The look my mother shot me could have frozen the Colorado River in July. "Family helps family, Sarah. It's only temporary." That phrase, "only temporary," hit me like a slap. I'd been hearing those same words about my own living situation for over a year now, with increasing frequency and decreasing warmth. The decision was made without any further discussion. No one asked how I felt about it. No one considered what this would mean for Lily and Max. No one seemed to remember that my own temporary arrangement was approaching the 18-month mark, with no end date in sight. Marcus and Jessica moved in the following weekend, and the transformation was immediate and jarring. My father, who had never once offered to help me rearrange furniture when we moved in, spent an entire Saturday setting up a portable crib in their room and reorganizing closet space for Jessica's extensive wardrobe. My mother, meanwhile, cleared out an entire linen closet for Jessica's toiletries and baby supplies, despite the fact that my own belongings had remained in suitcases for the first 6 months of our stay. The house rules changed overnight. Suddenly, Lily and Max were expected to whisper throughout the day because Oliver is napping. Their toys, which had previously been welcome in the living room and family areas, were now considered clutter and were repeatedly packed away in boxes. The television, which the twins had been allowed to watch for an hour after school, was now permanently tuned to whatever Jessica wanted to see. I came home from a particularly difficult shift one evening, We'd lost a 7-year-old patient that day, and I was emotionally drained to find Lily sitting alone on the back porch steps, tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, sitting beside her and pulling her close. "Grandma yelled at me for jumping rope in the backyard," she sniffled. She said I was being too loud and inconsiderate. But Oliver wasn't even sleeping. He was in the living room with Aunt Jessica, and they were watching TV really loud. That same week, Max came home from school bursting with excitement about a science project he'd been working on. His teacher had selected him to represent their class in the district science fair, a huge honor for a 3rd grader. When he tried to show my mother his project about solar systems, she waved him away dismissively. "Not now, Max. I'm helping Jessica pick out paint colors for their new nursery." I watched my son's face crumble, and something hardened inside my chest. The favoritism wasn't just obvious, it was cruel. When Oliver threw food from his high chair during dinner, everyone laughed indulgently. "He's just exploring textures," Jessica would say, making no move to clean up the mess. But when Max politely asked if there was anything else he could eat besides the spicy adult food my mother had prepared, he was lectured about being ungrateful. "When I was growing up, we ate what was put in front of us," Helen said sternly. "Children today are far too picky." The double standard was so blatant that even my diplomatic son noticed. "How come Oliver can throw food, but I get in trouble for asking for a sandwich?" he whispered to me later. I had no good answer for him. By midsummer, I found myself walking on eggshells in what was supposed to be our temporary home. Marcus and Jessica treated the house like their personal hotel, inviting friends over for dinner parties without checking with anyone else, leaving their laundry in the washing machine for days, and rearranging kitchen items without asking. Jessica complained constantly about the healthy snacks I bought for the twins, suggesting instead that we should stock more normal foods that Oliver could eventually enjoy. Meanwhile, I was contributing more to household expenses than ever before, doing most of the cooking and cleaning, and ensuring that Lily and Max remained respectful and unobtrusive. Yet I was regularly reminded that our presence was temporary and conditional, while Marcus was told repeatedly that this was his home too. The breaking point came during a family barbecue in late July. My parents had invited extended family over, aunts, uncles, cousins, for what was supposed to be a celebration of summer. Instead, it became a showcase for Oliver's development milestones. "Look how he's trying to pull himself up," my mother gushed to anyone who would listen. Marcus was an early crawler too. Some children just have that natural athleticism. She then turned to Max, who had been quietly playing with his cousin Emma by the pool, and added, "It's too bad you didn't inherit that coordination from your father's side." Michael was always so athletic, wasn't he? I saw my son's face crumple before he carefully composed himself, the way children do when they're learning that the adult world can be inexplicably cruel. My Aunt Carol, who had always been perceptive about family dynamics, caught my eye across the patio. After dinner, she pulled me aside. "How long has it been like this?" she asked quietly. "It's always been this way to some degree," I admitted, "but it's gotten much worse since Marcus and Jessica moved in." "This isn't healthy for your kids, Sarah," she said, echoing concerns that had been growing in my own mind. "They deserve better than to be treated as second-class citizens in their own family." I nodded, tears threatening. "I'm working on it. I have a plan." And I did. Over the past few weeks, I'd been meeting with a realtor during my lunch breaks at the hospital. We'd looked at several rental properties, and I'd found a small 3-bedroom house just 15 minutes from work and in the same school district. The rent was at the absolute top of my budget, but I'd been pre-approved based on my employment history and credit score. I'd signed the lease the week before, but hadn't told anyone. Not even Lily and Max. I didn't want to get their hopes up until everything was finalized. The house would be available for move-in on August 15th, just 3 weeks away. That night, after the family barbecue, I overheard Marcus and my father discussing their living arrangements in the kitchen. "The contractor says it might take another month or two," Marcus was saying. "And honestly, with the baby, it might make more sense to just stay through the fall. The holidays are coming up anyway." "You know you're always welcome here," my father replied warmly. "This is your home." I wondered if either of them remembered that I'd been told my stay was temporary, that I was expected to find my own place as soon as possible. The double standard was so glaring it would have been laughable if it weren't breaking my children's hearts. The next morning, I took Lily and Max out for breakfast at their favorite pancake place. Something we rarely did, but I needed time alone with them, away from the toxic atmosphere of the house. "I need you both to know something important," I told them as they enjoyed their chocolate chip pancakes. "No matter what Grandma and Grandpa say or do, you two are amazing, valuable people. The way they're treating you isn't because of anything you've done wrong." Lily, always perceptive, studied my face carefully. "Are we going to move out soon, Mom?" I was surprised by her directness. "What makes you ask that?" "You've been working more night shifts," she observed. "And you seem different lately. Less sad and more determined." Out of the mouths of babes. My 8-year-old daughter had noticed the change in me before I'd fully acknowledged it myself. "Just keep being your wonderful selves for a little bit longer," I told them, not quite ready to reveal my plan. "Can you do that for me?" They both nodded, and I saw a flicker of hope in their eyes that had been missing for too long. When we returned home, Jessica was loudly complaining about the twins' backpacks being in the front hallway, despite the fact that Oliver's stroller, diaper bag, and various toys were scattered throughout every common area of the house. "Children need to learn to pick up after themselves," she lectured me as if I were a novice parent rather than someone who'd been raising kids since before she'd even met my brother. I smiled tightly and helped Lily and Max move their belongings, reminding myself that we only had to endure this for 3 more weeks. I had no idea that everything was about to explode in a way that would force my hand, even sooner than I'd planned. The explosion came on a sweltering Tuesday in early August, just 10 days before our planned move-in date. I was scheduled for a particularly demanding 12-hour shift in the pediatric ICU. We were short-staffed, and I'd been assigned to cover more patients than usual. The day had been relentless: 2 emergency admissions, a code blue that thankfully ended well, and the kind of emotional intensity that left every nurse drained by closing time. During my brief lunch break, I barely had time to check my phone, but when I did, my blood ran cold. Multiple texts from both Lily and Max were waiting for me, each message more distressing than the last. From Lily: "Mom, something weird is happening. Grandpa and Uncle Marcus are moving our stuff." From Max: "Grandma says we have to move to the basement. This isn't fair." From Lily again: "Mom, please come home. They took all our things downstairs." From Max: "I hate it here. The basement is cold and scary, and there are bugs." My hands shook as I tried calling the house. No answer. I called both children's cell phones, the basic flip phones I'd gotten them for emergencies just like this. Still no answer. Finally, I managed to send a text to Lily: "I'll be home as soon as I can. Stay calm. I love you both." I immediately found my charge nurse and explained the family emergency. Fortunately, Linda had kids of her own and understood completely. She arranged coverage for my remaining 4 hours, though it still took nearly an hour to properly hand off my patients and complete the critical documentation I couldn't leave unfinished. The drive home from Denver General felt like the longest 25 minutes of my life. My mind raced through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Had my parents really moved my children to the basement? The unfinished, poorly ventilated basement that occasionally flooded during heavy rains and had a persistent moisture problem? When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in my car for a moment, trying to center myself. I needed to assess the situation clearly before reacting. As a nurse, I'd learned that rushing into emotional situations without first understanding the facts usually made everything worse. The scene inside the house confirmed my worst fears, and then some. Lily and Max were huddled together on the living room couch, both with red-rimmed eyes and the defeated posture of children who'd been systematically crushed. My mother was in the kitchen with Jessica, both sipping iced tea as if nothing unusual had occurred. Marcus and my father were nowhere to be seen, though I could hear power tools running in the garage. "What's going on?" I asked, going straight to my children and kneeling in front of them. Max threw his arms around my neck. "They moved all our stuff to the basement without asking us," he whispered. "They said we don't deserve the good rooms upstairs." Lily nodded miserably. Grandpa said Uncle Marcus's family is more important than us right now, so we have to make room. I hugged them both tightly, my anger building like a pressure cooker, but I kept my voice calm for their sake. Let me go talk to Grandma and see what's happening. In the kitchen, my mother barely looked up when I entered. "You're home early," she observed, with a casual tone someone might use to comment on the weather. "Why are my children's belongings in the basement?" I asked directly. Jessica, who had Oliver balanced on her hip, answered before my mother could speak. We needed to make some adjustments to the living arrangements. Marcus and I need a proper nursery for Oliver, plus I need space for my home office now that my marketing firm has gone completely remote. So you decided to move Lily and Max to the unfinished basement without discussing it with me first? My voice was deadly quiet, the tone I used with doctors who were about to make a mistake that could harm a patient. My mother finally met my eyes. It was the most logical solution, Sarah. The children are older and more adaptable than a baby. Besides, Oliver deserves the best accommodations. He's here all day while your children are at school most of the time anyway. The casual cruelty of her statement took my breath away. My children deserve safe, appropriate living spaces just as much as Oliver did. Don't be so dramatic, my mother continued dismissively. The basement is perfectly adequate. Your father spent all morning setting up their beds down there and everything. The basement has a mold problem in the northeast corner, I pointed out, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. It gets bone cold at night, and the ceiling is unfinished with exposed beams. There's only one tiny window that doesn't even open properly for ventilation. They'll manage, my mother said with finality. Family means making sacrifices. Apparently, in her definition, family meant my children should always be the ones sacrificing. At that moment, Marcus and my father came through the back door, both covered in sawdust and looking pleased with themselves. "Oh good, you're home," my father said when he saw me. "We've made some changes that work better for everyone." "Yes, I can see that," I replied, fighting to keep my tone level. "You moved my children's belongings to the basement without my permission or even a conversation." Marcus shrugged as if we were discussing something as mundane as what to have for dinner. "We need the upstairs space. Oliver is getting more mobile and needs room to develop properly. Plus, Jessica's client calls require a quiet environment. And my children need safe, appropriate bedrooms," I countered. "The basement is fine," my father said dismissively. I installed some additional lighting and put down those carpet remnants from the garage. They should be grateful they have a place to stay at all. I stared at him, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time in my adult life. This man who had raised me, whom I'd spent years trying to please, had just revealed exactly how little he valued me and my children. "Max has asthma," I reminded them, my voice getting stronger. "The basement is damp and has visible mold issues. It could trigger a serious attack." "You're overreacting as usual," Marcus said with an eye roll that reminded me painfully of our childhood dynamics. "Kids are resilient. Jessica and I lived in much worse conditions when we were starting out, didn't we, honey?" Jessica nodded in agreement, though I happened to know she'd grown up in a 5-bedroom house in one of Denver's most affluent neighborhoods and had never lived anywhere that could remotely be considered worse conditions. I looked around at the 4 adults who had made this decision about my children's living situation. None of them showed even a hint of remorse or understanding. To them, this was perfectly reasonable. The golden child's family deserved the best, while my children deserved whatever scraps were left over. I walked back to the living room where Lily and Max waited anxiously. They looked up at me with such trust, such hope that I would fix this impossible situation. In that moment, something crystallized within me, a calm certainty about what needed to happen next. I smiled at them, a genuine smile despite the circumstances, and said 3 words that would change everything. "Pack your bags." They looked confused, but I nodded encouragingly. "Trust me, pack everything important to you. We'll get the rest later." My father had followed me into the living room and overheard. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Sarah. Stop being so dramatic. No one is asking you to leave." I turned to him, still smiling. "No, Dad. You just made it abundantly clear where my children and I stand in this family, and we deserve better than this." "What are you talking about?" my father sputtered as Lily and Max looked between us with wide, hopeful eyes. Go on, kids, I said gently. Go pack your backpacks with your most important things. We'll come back for the rest tomorrow. As they hurried upstairs to the rooms they were being evicted from, my mother entered the living room with her usual dramatic flair. What nonsense is this now? She demanded. You cannot just leave because things didn't go your way. Marcus and Jessica followed, with Ethan perched on Marcus's hip. The whole family was gathering for what they assumed would be my inevitable capitulation. This isn't about things not going my way, I explained calmly. This is about basic respect and human decency, both of which have been sorely lacking in this household. We've given you a roof over your head for almost 2 years, my father exclaimed, his face reddening. How dare you talk about lack of consideration? Yes, you have, I acknowledged, and I've been grateful. I've also contributed financially, done most of the cooking and cleaning, and made sure my children respected your rules and routines. But today you crossed a line that I won't tolerate. Jessica scoffed. It's just a bedroom rearrangement. You're being ridiculously oversensitive. I turned to her. Is that what you'd call it if someone moved your child to an unsafe, inappropriate space without consulting you first? She had no answer for that. The basement is perfectly adequate, my mother insisted, falling back on repetition when logic failed her. We raised you and Marcus without all these special accommodations children seem to need nowadays. The basement has mold, I repeated slowly, as if speaking to someone with a head injury. Max has asthma. It's also cold, damp, and doesn't have proper emergency exits. It's not a legal bedroom by any housing code standard. My father waved his hand dismissively. Those codes are just government overreach. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Safety regulations were government overreach when they inconvenienced him, but I suspected he'd feel differently if he were the one being relegated to substandard living conditions. Where exactly do you think you're going to go? Marcus asked with a smirk that reminded me why I'd never really liked him, even as children. It's not like you've been saving much money, what with your spending habits. And there it was, the fundamental misunderstanding they all shared. They saw me as financially dependent and irresponsible, despite all evidence to the contrary. They truly believed I had no options, no agency, no ability to stand on my own feet. That's where you're wrong, I said quietly. I've been saving since the day I moved in here. I've been working extra shifts and building my emergency fund. And 2 weeks ago, I signed a lease on a house just 20 minutes from here. The stunned silence was deeply satisfying. My mother recovered first. You were planning to leave without telling us? She asked, her voice trembling with manufactured hurt. I was planning to give you proper notice next week, I clarified. The house isn't available until August 15th, but today's events have accelerated my timeline considerably. You cannot be serious, Marcus said, finally realizing this wasn't a bluff. Where are you going to stay until then? That's no longer any of your concern, I replied. Lily and Max came back downstairs, each carrying a backpack and a small duffel bag. Lily was clutching her clarinet case, and Max had his art supplies and the stuffed bear he'd slept with since he was 2. We're ready, Mom, Lily said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in months. This is ridiculous, my mother declared. You cannot seriously be leaving right now. We are, I confirmed. We'll come back tomorrow to get the rest of our things when everyone has had a chance to calm down. If you walk out that door, my father threatened, don't expect to be welcomed back with open arms. I looked at him sadly. I stopped expecting that a long time ago, Dad. As we loaded our bags into my car, my family watched from the front porch with expressions ranging from anger to disbelief. They had been so certain of their power over me, so confident in my dependence, that they couldn't process the reality of our departure. As I started the car, my mother rushed to my window. Sarah, please, you're overreacting. Come back inside and we'll figure something out. We'll talk tomorrow when I come to get our things, I said firmly. But tonight, we're going somewhere my children are valued. And with that, we drove away from the house that had never really been our home, toward a future that was uncertain, but finally, blessedly, our own. In the rearview mirror, I watched Lily and Max looking back at the house that had been our residence for nearly 2 years. What surprised me wasn't sadness in their expressions, but relief. Even at 8 years old, they understood that we were escaping something toxic. "Are we really moving to our own house?" Max asked cautiously, as if afraid that speaking it aloud might make it disappear. "Almost," I told him, my voice steadier than I felt. "We have a house waiting for us, but we can't move in until next week. Tonight we're going to stay with my friend Karen from work." Karen Martinez was my closest colleague at Denver General, a fellow pediatric nurse who'd become like a sister to me over the past 3 years. When I'd called her during my rushed exit from the hospital, she'd immediately offered her guest room without asking a single question about why we needed it. "Is it because of what Grandpa and Grandma did?" Lily asked, her artistic mind always seeking to understand the connections between events. I chose my words carefully. "It's because we deserve to live somewhere where everyone is treated with respect and kindness. I've been planning for us to move out for a while now, but yes, what happened today made me realize we needed to leave sooner rather than later." "I didn't like how they talked about us," Max said quietly, "like we weren't important enough to ask before they moved our stuff." My heart broke a little at his words. "You are both incredibly important," I assured them, "and anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve to have you in their lives." When we arrived at Karen's modest townhouse in the Stapleton neighborhood, she was waiting on her front porch with her 10-year-old daughter Sophia. Karen had already prepared the guest room with an air mattress for the twins alongside the queen bed I would use. She'd even stopped by the grocery store and picked up ice cream and the ingredients for her famous chocolate chip cookies. "Welcome to Casa Martinez," she said warmly, hugging each of us in turn. Sophia's been excited all day about having house guests. As the kids settled in, picking at their ice cream with subdued enthusiasm, while Sophia chattered about her summer camp adventures, Karen pulled me aside in her kitchen. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "It takes real courage to set boundaries with family, especially when you're in a vulnerable position." "I just wish I'd done it sooner," I admitted, the weight of the day finally catching up with me. "Before they hurt my kids like this." "You're doing it now," she pointed out, handing me a glass of wine I desperately needed. "And that's what matters. Sometimes the right time isn't the perfect time. It's just when you finally can't tolerate the wrong situation anymore." That night, as Lily and Max slept peacefully in the unfamiliar room, more peacefully than I'd seen them sleep in months, I lay awake processing everything that had happened. For the first time in years, I had stood up for myself and my children, without wavering, without second-guessing, without trying to smooth things over to keep everyone else comfortable. The next morning, I called in to use a personal day at work. Karen offered to let the twins stay with her and Sophia while I went back to retrieve our belongings, but I declined. "They need to see this through," I explained. "It's important for them to know we're doing this together, and that standing up for yourself sometimes means facing uncomfortable situations with dignity." We arrived at my parents' house at 10 a.m., when I knew everyone would be home. My father answered the door with a scowl that softened only slightly when he saw the twins. "Come to apologize for your tantrum?" he asked me. "No," I replied evenly. "We've come to get our things." His face hardened again. "Your mother was up half the night, crying because of your dramatic exit." "I'm sorry she's upset," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want to hurt my parents. I just needed to protect my children. "But we're still moving out."